Hi. Um, I wanted to do a video and I've been thinking about it for a very long time, but I didn't want to come off as an ableist or somebody who is dismissing the autistic spectrum in any way. My uh, One of my children, who's an adult, has been diagnosed with autism, and severe enough that uh, it, it it is a disability. And so this was pretty late in life for him. And uh, I, I kind of didn't get into it a lot because of other issues that were surrounding it at the time. And so I didn't want to learn too much. I have always accepted him as being different, but not someone that I would typically identify as autistic. Well, eventually I looked into the symptoms and I realized that there was a lot of resonance between my experience uh, and and the diagnosis. And so I spoke to my doctor last year, probably around April, May, and oh, excuse me. And I g I ask her, and as I said in my previous video, I ask her, and she's known me for 13 years and, said, "Yeah, I've known all along. What was the point in even telling you? Because how would it make your life different?" And so, it it's an interesting process because you're used to yourself, you're older. I'm uh, approaching, as I said, my retirement age. And you just don't think about things like, oh, I've had autism all my life, or Asperger's now being diagnosed in a different way. um I would say that maybe I probably have always thought that I was ADHD. I know that all of my kids have ADHD. They've all been diagnosed. And it resonates. It makes sense. In terms of role playing, um, a lot of things make sense to me now that didn't make sense at the time. So, back in the days when I was playing this, when it first pretty much came out. And this was, I was a snob, so why would you get the red box or anything like that when you can have the advanced one, right? And when you look inside, it's teeny tiny small text. So if you're brand new to D&D or any type of role-playing game, this was it. I mean, you know, this is like Bible-sized text, okay? It's very, very small, very dense, and everything is exceedingly detailed. Some people have said that it's a very difficult read, regardless of where you are on the neurospectrum. I had a terrible time understanding it. I grasped the concepts, what now we would interpret as being narrative play, um, but, the numerical subtleties just never processed. But I was obsessed with this. It was something that at the time, being a 14, 15-year-old, I was just there. And, I've said this before in other videos that I was part of that, of the church generation where I wasn't getting it from my parents. I was getting a lot of stress and anxiety thrown at me, guilt and shame from the church, at least the part of the church. I'm an Anglican, and so we're supposed to be broad and middle of the road and all that stuff, but every church has its own little nuance. And the preachers that I was involved in and the youth groups and all that stuff were very evangelical. And so this was you're going to hell in a handbasket. So I got rid of a whole bunch of these um, and then kept on getting back to them because my brain was just focused on this storytelling, this game that to me was absolutely revolutionary. And I guess my ADHD aspect of Asperger's was coming out when with that obsession, and I bought other role-playing systems like Middle Earth Role Playing, Shadow, I wanna say Shadow Dark, but that's only because it's recent. Yeah, the one in Seattle. And, my brain. Remember, I'm old. Uh, and, uh the one with bicycles, with cyber bicycles, it was like cyberpunk. Anyway, and a whole bunch of other stuff. Harn Master, Harn World. Uh, and that was even more dense. So this obsessive kind of behavior started, I guess, to make sense to me when I was diagnosed as I started, and I haven't been really telling anybody. I've been pretty quiet about it. I think that maybe one or two people at work know. I told my boss, as it were, the Archbishop, um, and they said, "How's that working out for you?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm fine. It just helps me to understand me. It doesn't change anything." Um, but it makes sense in terms of how I would communicate with people with the game itself. So, playing a character and then stating things that other people wouldn't understand, and I'd get weird looks. And I thought I was being very clever, or I thought that I was being appropriate, but it wasn't that it was inappropriate, it was just not understood. And also, again, not understanding the rules completely or being able to retain or digest, but at the same time being obsessed. Um, i- i- it's uh, it's a funny thing because I've had a problem spelling. I still have a problem spelling. Um, and I'm very smart according to IQ tests that I've had to take in the past, and I just don't see this as being an issue. But I remember when I was in my 20s, I was in university and I was playing with a group of physicists and other university people. And I got a lot of flack for not being able to understand well, what essentially was second edition rules and not uh, having the social skills that I thought that I had, but I didn't have. Now, it took me a while to kind of be able to navigate social interactions enough and my own behavior through a number of pastoral courses and stuff like that, psychological psych courses and things that were behavioral in nature and doing diagnostics from a different point of view. And that's just uh, part of what I find important, the social cues, the empathy, and active listening, things that are very basic in therapeutic type of work, which in a lot of ways is what I do as a priest. So the point is that I was ostracized by a lot of people playing role playing because I was not understood and I didn't understand why I wasn't understood. Um, the repetitive nature of me wanting to uh, build worlds, build games, make things, create characters, and going from one idea to the next idea to the next idea, and then rinse and repeat, going to the same process. So if you looked at my Pinterest kind of craziness, you know, I'm obsessed with Chinese stuff, then I'm obsessed with Japanese stuff, then I'm obsessed with Southeast Asian stuff, then I'm obsessed with uh, uh, the actual history, then I'm obsessed with the myth, then and then I'm getting books, and I'm getting more books, and uh, in university, one of my problems was is that I didn't finish papers because I never felt that it it was complete. It's the same thing for role playing. I never feel like I'm complete. So it's not just this completionist nature of having to buy every book in a particular system. It's an obsession of saying, uh, "Hey, I need everything because I need as many tools as possible." So papers would be like, I'd have, so many resources that I didn't need. I needed about three, and I had about 20 or 30 or 40, so I'd get swamped. It's the same thing with D&D and role-playing games. I get swamped, even now, with my mind kind of going all over the place and struggling with the interest itself, because it moves. There's an obsession, then it moves, and so I'll be super hyper focused for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, and then I'll move on. So I was translating Hexen, 1733, from German, which I do not speak, into English. Uh, and I was using a number of AI before AI was really ubiquitous. And so I was learning German in order to translate this. I mean, essentially, that's what I was doing, is I was learning German just to do this. Now, my French, I'm from Quebec, is very poor. I can understand it, but I speak very, very poorly. I'm, I don't feel that that's as important as learning this German for this particular game. And I spent months on it, and then all of a sudden it was like a light went on, and I was like, "Ah, now I'm into this," whatever it was at the time, and I forget what it was. Um, and now I'm like into Chinese stuff. I'm watching Chinese movies, Chinese dramas with dubs. So I'm kind of learning Chinese, and I'm obsessed with Chinese culture and 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 it's the dynasties, but not in the kind of kung fu Cantonese way, but more like the North and traveling west and all of that. Well, now I'm hyper focused, but I was hyper focused on Japanese stuff. I was hyper focused on German stuff for a long time, and then I go to North America, and I'm like, oh, I need to write something for Tales of the Old West, because I've got this idea about something that's happening in what is now Saskatchewan or Manitoba, and this is constant. This is the way your ADHD autistic player thinks and operates, and um, and so if you're a GM and you have a player that seems to be having struggles with the understanding, don't get upset with them. We think that we're neurosensitive and that we're a sensitive people. I don't think that that's necessarily true. Um, I get very impatient with games. I don't like games to lag. Um, I don't like sitting down at the table and not immediately starting to play. I always like to have fun, when I'm playing in person. But I'm here to play a game. I'm not here to eat Doritos and socialize. That's that's kind of a weird autistic trait that I've learned. I used to think, "Oh, it's just me. I just wanna get out of the room. I just don't like, I'm socially, awkward. I like to sit where I can leave super fast. If I'm at a conference or anything like that, I always sit, uh, in a particular place where I can leave quickly or get out first." And, I used to think, because of Myers-Briggs and various tests, that I was introverted, and I'm not introverted, I'm extroverted, but I just protect myself because of the, high functioning nature and the masking that comes with learning how to interact with people to appear like you're normal, um, whatever that means. And so you innately pretend to be something else. So it's not that you're lying to other people. It's not like you're lying to yourself. It's called a coping mechanism, right? Or defense mechanism. So I'm looking at I'm looking now at at you know at a definition from Google. But you can all just Google this because it's super easy. Autism high masking, and you'll come up with it. So, it's known as camouflaging. It's a strategy used by autistic individuals to suppress or conceal autistic traits. And you know, when we're role playing, I think in some ways it gives us that freedom to be who we imagine that we could be, or to allow ourselves to drop that social awkwardness to go into a different type of awkwardness in terms of role play. Um, Communicating for me in a regular setting, in a regular neurotypical world, is exhausting, very exhausting. And I think that if you're a GM and you're dealing with a player who looks as if they're disinterested or bored, or they're not completely there, it may not be that the game is boring. It may not be that you're not doing your job. It may just be that the person uh, is is coping or digesting. They may not interact as much. I tend to be more extroverted when I play. I'm much more introverted in other settings. Um, I tend to spend a lot of time uh, looking at people intentionally. But if I'm ever in a situation where I feel uncomfortable, I won't look somebody in the eye. Um, I don't think that that's atypical, but I think that there's a sense of self-lying, or of being revealed, of being exposed. And so when I look at somebody in the eyes, um, it's a very intentional act, and it's one that I'm not naturally comfortable with, but it's one that I know is important to the other person. So as a player, or in my work, I know that this is important for other people to have the eye contact, but it's something that I have worked on because it's not something that comes naturally. It kind of disorients me. Um, uh, Learning how to deal with noise, light. Um, I don't like playing in friendly local game stores as much as I like the interaction. I like the playing. I did so for a number of years playing fifth edition, and I was I was very anxious, and I didn't really understand what I just felt angry and anxious. Well, it's fluorescent lights. They literally drive me nuts. I could just break every one of them. Um, we just got fluorescent lights in our hall, or LED lights, and they're as bright as the sun, or at least that's how I feel. Well, I never turn on my office lights. I have a lamp because I can't, and a warm lamp. I can't stand blue spectrum. I can't stand that sunlight spectrum. It has to be very low, 2000 Kelvin, very orangey, light that your great grandparents used to have. And those are the type of shades I enjoy as well. I don't like a lot. I like a lot of lights that are all very dim. I'm kind of like the typical IKEA person without the brightness or the overhead. I never turn on an overhead light. If you ever see an overhead light and I'm around, uh, I am not well. And noise. If you have players and there's a lot of noise around, and you see somebody who's really anxious, or you as a GM are anxious, it may be simply because that's part of you trying to cope and trying to mask what deep inside of you is a gut reaction to the stimulus around you. I never equated it to autism. I always just thought, well, I'm quirky. I hate big lights. It never registered that, the dogs barking, my kids as babies crying would be something that I learned how to high mask, but all the time it was, I don't know, if you're autistic, you know what I mean when I say it's killing me inside. Like, it's just I don't mind the scraping of the nails against the chalkboard. That to me doesn't bother me as much as just big noise around. There's certainly unexpected sounds. It's not just like jump. It's it's a different level of cringe that I can't seem to be able to articulate how much effort goes into the suppression of those. So I guess the video that I'm trying to say to you and what I'm trying to articulate is A, as a GM, be sensitive that there are people who may not have ever been diagnosed as autistic, may never have been diagnosed as ADHD. Saying that a person is ADHD, um, I don't think is helpful. And I think actually it's a little bit insulting because w- we tend to throw it out I think in my experience, people have thrown it out in a way that implies that, oh, you should be on medication or you're out of control. It's not necessarily a friendly diagnosis. It's a very subtle dig at an individual. Um, so pointing out somebody else's, uh, whether or not they're obvious flaws, I don't think that that's helpful. I think that what's helpful is, uh, uh, you know, uh, Chris, you look like you may be, um, you look like something's going on. Is there anything I can do to help? Um, and see if that elicits something. They may just not say anything, say, no, everything's good. And that is the type of response that I would give. But it's nice not to be said, oh, you're not paying attention. Your brain is all over the place. Oh, you must have ADHD or get off your phone. Now, I have another issue of having phones at the table, but I think that that is not an ADHD autism thing. I think that that's just called being polite. Um, but those type of needs for um, social breaks, I think that in some way I'm learning that, and now I don't do this, but I think some people do it uh, to kind of desensitize. Other people are doing it because they're literally with you, but they're with someone else, and that's being on the phone. But I think that um, that there's a thing why people mask to conform to societal expectations and to avoid exclusion or teasing. And that's huge. The role playing world, face to face, as well as online, can be cruel. I think this is probably why we've gone very big as a hobby, as an industry on safety tools. Ben Milton did a wonderful video about how the word safety tools is a little bit of a misnomer, and I agree with his analysis. The I think we're trying to be sensitive so that we don't call out people, but then we're asking them to call themselves out in front of us with red cards or saying, well, I need a veil. The last thing an autistic person or a um or someone like me, okay, and I don't mean to speak on another person's behalf, but the last thing I would want to do is raise a red card and point myself out and stop a game in mid flow because I feel uncomfortable where the rest of the group feels comfortable. If I see that all of the table is feeling uncomfortable, then I may say something like, "Oh, well, let's move on," because I'm very sensitive to other people's emotion because I've trained myself to be sensitive to other people's emotion in order to guard and safeguard my own emotions. And again, that's a masking trait that I'm aware of because of my training, which I completely and totally never looked at the mirror in. You know, you can have all the training. You can be a psychiatrist or psychologist or a therapist or a social worker and never look at the mirror and truly see um, oneself. I took a course which is called Clinical Pastoral Education. It's it's the way of teaching potential clerics or religious leaders or people who are going to visit in the hospital, essentially, uh, how they are perceived by the people that they visit. And nowadays, uh, hospitals are extremely careful about privacy, and I think that that's a good thing. And so you don't have as much clear access that you used to have in the past, and that's because you get a whole bunch of crazies who be going in trying to convert people, on their deathbed or on their near deathbed. Um, and so that was an appropriate protection for people, but you learn about how the person in the bed or how the person in the nursing home or whatever, or even the person just out at the marketplace will see you. And even though I took an extensive course and an extended extensive course, I knew what buttons I would push in others. I knew how others saw me. I knew that I was different. I knew that I was misunderstood, but I never, ever, and this was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I never ever, and neither did um, the course director, ever make any uh, connection between a possible Asperger's autistic diagnosis. So just remember that the people around you, the people that you're playing with, maybe yourself, but maybe it's just being aware of other people and the fact that we need to be sensitive, but in a very quiet and understanding way. Um, if and again, I can't stress this enough. If a person isn't getting the rules, it's not because they're dumb. It's because they just don't understand. So I've just come off of not understanding how sound works, and it's been driving me mental. Eh. But after I calmed myself down, I took a breath, I started using my own brain to think about things instead of everybody else's. Again, I became hyper focused and I became obsessed with this. Um, I don't think a day went by since September that I hadn't thought, how am I going to improve my sound? How am I going to improve this? How am I going to fix it? Is this going to work today? If it's not going to work, and it's not about channel growth. It's just simply about this hyper focus. It's wrong. It needs to be fixed. Um, just understand that these are the type of things that your players may be going through, and identifying a potential diagnosis is probably not your place. Um, but to gently maybe guide them in a direction, gently, of oh, I saw you were uncomfortable with this, um is there something that I can help with, or something along those lines. But just be very, very careful about uh how how you help because that again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to help people enjoy the hobby, whether you're a GM, whether you're a player. But players' responsibility is to help those around them to have the best time that they can have. It's not just I keep on telling the teens that I play with that this is not about you and you being the hero of the game. This is about us making each one of us the best hero of the game. We want to have fantastic memories as a collective. And you will shine today, and another person will shine today, and another person will shine next week, and another person will shine the week after. And we all are sensitive that we're not trying to be the star each and every week. You know, and that is a challenge to players because I think that a lot of players think that you're out to win. I need the loot. I need to fulfill those Dragonbane uh experience point marks. I need to make sure that I'm doing everything to be the best. Um Yes, but you're also trying to encourage others. So, and my recent character was terribly enabling one of the characters to drink all the time. He's an alcoholic. Well, in real life, I'm an alcoholic, and I've been dry for 5 years, 6 years, and I don't mind playing a character who's an alcoholic. I don't mind enabling a character who's an alcoholic. Um, I think that people will come to realize that they need to change their life. Um, and if they don't, well, they don't. They're not a bad person. They just are who they are. And I think in retrospect, a lot of the drinking that I had done, and it was never day drinking. I was a very, again, like like autism, I was a very high masking drinker. And so I would drink long time after work. Uh, I'd I'd go out and play role playing games and stuff like that with friends and stuff, but I absolutely wouldn't drink until late in the game or anything like that. I wouldn't drive drunk. I wouldn't wake up in the morning or have anything during the day. So but I could also polish off an entire, a bottle of vodka or scotch, usually Lagavulin. Uh, and so I think that was masking the anxiety that I felt by repressing all of those feelings of the noise, the stimulus, the lack of being able to succeed in a task, the the many different things that were spinning around in my head all at once. Um, I think that it's possible that as we age, we become more forgiving of ourselves, or we have the possibility of becoming more forgiving of ourselves and not feel that shame or that guilt, um, and are more open to self-discovery, and I hope more tolerant of other people within the gaming community who are divergent. Um, we are all individuals, no matter what. And so we all treat each other with respect and individuality that we wish to receive and express to others. So whether it's neurodivergence or whether you identify differently um, with your pronouns or um, in any type of um, uh, non-heterosexual way, um, because I know that it's LGBTQ2 plus, but there's also other stuff that has been identified, and I don't remember the first two letters. Um, but we're sensitive to those with different gender identities and different sexualities or non-binaries, but at the same time, um, or asexual. But I'm not sure if we're completely honest when we say that we're tolerant of those who are not getting the rules, of not getting how to play, of not getting that D8 is not a D10, or that D10 is not a D8, or how can you not understand that pyramid is a D4, or that thing that looks like a lozenge is a D4. Um, how can you make a mistake of the D20 being a D12? Um, it, we are all so different that we need the tolerance within our community. And as somebody who avoids things and um, who suppresses a lot of emotion, and that it drains me terribly, I realize how we as a community uh, need to be at the forefront of sympathy and empathy, and, well, empathy. Sympathy is just shutting somebody up. But yeah. So, last thing I'll say is the consequences of masking are, excuse me, and then I'll stop. Increased stress and anxiety and exhaustion. Absolutely. Difficulty forming genuine connections. Um, I have some friendships online. I have some, but they're online friendship acquaintances, but I still consider them friends. Uh, but to be honest, I had a lot of friends on Facebook, and because Facebook is such an evil empire, I dumped Facebook. And because I dumped Facebook, I dumped all of my friends from high school and everything like that. I gave a very brief explanation that I can't stand uh, what is happening to Facebook and I'm leaving. Bye. And then I just did it. Um, so I understand this difficulty forming genuine connections. I wouldn't say that I have a true best friend. I have a friend who is the longest friend, and I'm still in contact with that person, but I owe that person a call. We've known each other for 45 years, and I still haven't made that call. I don't like the phone. The phone's an evil thing. Most of the time, my phone is not on and I don't have any notifications. Why do I need to deal with people? Um, a sense of being lost or disconnected from oneself. I can't underestimate, or I can't undervalue this. This is huge. And I think this is very defining, kind of like the noise and mm, when there, an autistic person who is high masking will think, why do I feel like I wasn't there during the game? You know, I hardly remember the game. I don't feel like I was present. And you may have heard that. Oh, I don't remember what went on the last game. That's not just a memory problem. That's a disassociation issue that I really feel, and uh, and just disconnected from one's true self. Uh, it, Again, if you're a GM, if you're a player, pay attention to these things. You don't have to call it out. Just be aware that a person may find it difficult to just be trying so hard to belong because they really love what they're doing. Um, yes, a burnout is massive. I've suffered burnout a few times. Um, and it's so subtle. Again, a lot of these things are very subtle. You just don't want to do anything anymore. You just come to a complete stop. You don't, you just, it's almost like you can't cope with playing on a particular night. and you give some excuse or some lie as to why you can't play, but you're just too overstimulated. Um, it's a survival strategy, and that's exactly what it is. So, um, we mimic. We're the perfect mimickers. Maybe if you're a player, maybe play a mimic, and you'll just absolutely love it. So that's my spiel. I've been wanting to do this for a while. It talks about myself, so you get to know me a little bit more. I talk about my love of the game. I love the games. I love the systems. I don't always get a system, especially if it's heavy or rules heavy, but I want to play it. So I do what I can. And then there are other things where I am so in deep, but I'm in deep for a limited period of time and then I move on. So, so I hope this is helpful for some people who are feeling awkward playing or feeling like they just, why have I acted like this during the game? Why do I not remember things? Also exhaustion when you're on high alert all the time, you're using up all of your internal energy. And so you're so tired from being on. And I really mean this, being on is something that I have always felt in my life. That when I go into a large group, uh, I turn on. And it's just like a conference. I'm dead. I'm completely and totally. It does not invigorate me. It's just ugh. And so even playing a game can be daunting. Um, just remember that that's normal to be exhausted afterwards. It's normal to be burnt out, to have the anxiety, to have the depression afterwards because you've put so much energy into this. If you're aware of it, and I think now that I am, so I've been living with this for almost a year. Now that I've been more aware of it, Um, I'm able to cope better. I'm able to use different strategies. I understand that I'm masking. I understand what I'm doing. I understand why I'm not looking at somebody in the eye. I understand why I'm looking at a person in the eye. I understand the difference between um, my pastoral compassion, which is genuine, and my self protection, which is, I gotta go. I have another appointment now. It was lovely to see you. Um, and that's kind of that time to say, okay, I've got this much energy for this part for this amount of the day. I cannot spend this much. I've got this. And if I go over here, I'm going to pay for it for 3 or 4 days because for every little increment, we're talking about probably a shift of time that's going to be used. So anyway, take care. I've gone on well long enough. If you've listened to this video all the way through, um, be sensitive to others, care about others. Take care.